Computer decides what it's going to do. We're going to be coming through. So it's muted. All right, let's see. Now it's not muted.
On Blog Talk.
Alhamdulillah. I got to get you plugged in, and we will be there. Like Sam and Dave say, hold on, I'm coming. There you go. Ready to go?
Yeah, I believe so. I'm just kind of adjusting my screen a little bit. But
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, you got that brown working today, huh? You working that brown?
I do. But before I know what we said early on that we wasn't going to chop it up, but I just have a quick question. I just got a question.
Go.
What made you choose that to share today?
Yeah, to have this moment with you, I said, I'm gonna go ahead and play this. All right? I'm not gonna heads up her on what it is. But I say it's going to be a tune-in thing because she said that was what I was already thinking about. I was already about to do that. And then I hit you with that, mashallah. That's that telepathy, boo. Boom. We're connected.
Yeah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Yeah, I mean it's so layered and intense, but I'm gonna stick with this. But this, one thing, and I'm saying this online so everybody can get this recorded moment or whatever. That we have to create a dialogue exchange. Like, yes, we have our parts and bring it to the table, but I believe there needs to be a moment where they have to experience our exchange, the conversation and exchange, and not just the presentation aspect of it. Because what I have found in the exchanges, there's an unfolding that sends us on this journey so that the listeners can recognize that it's a two-man job. It's not something that you do in solitude and like, yeah, I got this. Then it's like, no, you got to serve that ball. Right. And let's go. Let's get the volley, what they call it, the volley going. Volley. Right. Yeah, so that's it, But
we're gonna do that, and what we'll do, we'll just establish on some series inside of our broadcast that this is that day where it's just a conversation. You know what I'm saying? We're just gonna, have, we talk and share and question, answer, blah blah blah, and then everybody have the opportunity to engage with that process. Yes. Okay. But I'm gonna get out the way and let you roll out. All right, sweetheart.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Welcome once again on this beautiful Monday, this new week, as we come together to share in this space of wealth creation and preservation. One thing about me and my thinking and how I process things, right? I always have to be sure to, like, what you're experiencing in my tone and how I'm speaking right now is I am big on listening and paying attention to my thoughts. And in some people, it can always be taken out as, some people try to say anxiety or whatever, like it's this negative thing, right? And in actuality, it's not about the anxiety. It's just your body is seeking to catch up with what your brain is processing, right? So your brain tells you, your brain works in the areas of how your body functions. Your brain is sending us, this is the system sending the breathe, right? The heartbeat, so it is doing multiple things at once, right? Then the imam hits us with some information, and it's you're entering this new data while the brain is like, but we still got to breathe, and we got to move our hands. I have an itch here, and so there's all of these things happening. And the tool that I have learned to take on, like when those moments, is to breathe. Like it just, and and we know the power of what this breath is, right? Is to breathe, take a deep breath in, let it out, take a moment to reconnect the spirit of to the body, right? Reconnect it. So it's like, look, it's all right, the ship is not going down. We gotta, you'll have an opportunity to process it, unless we could shelf it over here and then come back and revisit it. But this is what the focus is, right? And so what you're experiencing with me right now, and I am grateful and so thankful to Allah that I don't have an issue with verbalizing when these moments happen, because it happens to me a lot. It used to happen to me so many times where I just would just disconnect, because I couldn't quite, I couldn't give it a name. This processing, this thinking that's going on, and in many ways, I would miss out on this life experience because I didn't know how to navigate it. And so that's what's happening now. And then so now I go through this Rolodex of the process leading up to this very moment, and I'm going to share with you, like, even what I was going to talk about that is very much so connected, because it's a network of connections and experiences and all of those things that help us to know what we're doing here. What is this existence? What is this reality, as the Imam would use the term, this reality, right? That's going to shift us into it. When we learn and understand something, it shifts us into a new reality. So I have my group that we meet in the morning called Accountability Click, and I was sharing with them a story of a very real experience that I had this weekend, that I had been praying diligently about, something that I wanted, that I wanted to, be free of, as far as like mentally, like I want to break through this obstacle, this challenge, And so the initial thought is always, we go to prayer, right? I'm going to pray for this, pray for health. I pray for this, pray for that, whatever it is, right? And in this asking and the praying, because Ramadan was such an eye opener on how to listen, on how to pay attention. It's like, you're asking for me to show you some things, but you're asking for me to show it the way you want to see it. Like, you want to see it like this, right? But I've been showing you all along, but because it's forcing you to get a new way of seeing and understanding and recognizing, this is why you're struggling, this is why you're stressed, this is why you depressed, this is why, because you're trying to force your vision ahead of Allah's vision, right? Ahead of what Allah has for you. And I'm trying to tell you, like, it'll be a lot easier if you stop trying to push the way you want it to show up, and surrender and submit to what Allah says. This is how you're going to get to this thing, right? So I had created this post about prayer. It's like, when I got up and in my meditation, and when I'm journaling, I receive the messages that I need for myself. And the download was so heavy that my body was like, "Oh, this means we got to shift all the things," right? And I didn't know how I was going, but I've been praying for, trying to understand this prayer thing, this interaction, this conversation. And it said, you're praying for something you're not ready to be responsible for. Like, that was the message. And I'm having this inner dialogue with myself, like, no, I want this because this will get this, and then I can focus on that. It's like, no, you're praying for something that you're not even prepared to be responsible for it, right? So let's say, we're here talking about wealth creation, right? It's like, I want $1 million. If I was a millionaire, we got all the ideas. I would be able to give more. I could be more charitable. I'd build a masjid. You got the whole shopping list ready. You got all the plan together, right? But you cringe at the thought of just doing your taxes. But we want to be a millionaire, right? So it's like, if you was to get that $1 million tomorrow in your mailbox, ready, set, go. All right, I'm bodybuilding. I'm gonna do this. You gonna put yourself in more jeopardy that way because you haven't prepared the vessel to have the capacity for the responsibility that comes along with it. So the mercy is in preparing you for the capacity for this thing that you're asking for. Oh, I want to be married. Okay, there's a responsibility connected to that. Maybe you don't. I want to be married. Oh, do you? Do you want the responsibility of what that means to share space in partnership with someone else to be married? It's like, it's just, I feel lonely right now, or I want companionship right now. I need someone to help me out financially, take care about, all of the textbook reasons why we may ask for a thing. But before you even go there, there's a responsibility attached to that. And it's like, Allah's like, yeah, you can have that. Yes, absolutely. There's a responsibility attached to it. And maybe your vessel is not at the capacity to be able to handle that responsibility. So it's not about making this impulse buy, impulsively get married, impulsively invest in the business, impulsively start the business, impulsively to immediately, right? And in this quickness, you mess yourself up because you don't even have the capacity to carry the weight of what that means, right? Or what that looks like. I spoke about this in Ramadan when we talked about having the capacity for this scripture, the capacity for the Quran. And you can memorize all of it with ease, right? But if you don't have the capacity to really embody and ingest what that responsibility looks like, you're putting yourself at a real deficit. So the pieces that you do get and you understand and that you are holding on to, you're stretching your capacity to take on, what is being asked of you. So sometimes you might not want to be running towards it so hard that you try, because it could be something that'll completely knock you out. It said the Quran was revealed on the mountain and it was sent asunder, right? On a mountain. Like, this is to give us the visual. It's like, right? So when we approach the Quran to get, it's like, you better be clear as to why you're approaching this. What are you going? There's a responsibility connected to this knowing. There's a responsibility connected to this asking for understanding. Are you using it? Is your ego driving this vehicle in order for you to move forward with what it is that you know, right? Or what you think right? So surface level, yeah, I'm gonna memorize the last 30th of the Quran. Okay. You ready for the responsibility that comes along with that? Other than that, it's just in your throat. Like, that's it. That's what we, so what are we really doing here in this asking Allah to expand us in our wealth, expand us in our life, get these things, right? And this in this video, what was shared auditory, because though what I'm sharing does have a connection to that, I want us to understand this prayer. Like, there are things that we, genetically, just because I have a family member's like, oh, you guys have the same eyes. There are other things that come along with that. You get the family knows there. It's like these are base level pass downs, right? That there are things that we're better acclimated to doing. And I don't like the term generational curses and I don't like the language that is connected to that, because to me, for Camila, it is rooted in a space of born in sin. That's how it felt to me. Like, you don't get the back. And I'm like, well, I don't believe Allah operates like that. I just don't. I can't even, my brain doesn't even have the capacity to even see, well, what about this? Well, how Black people this? No, we pass down habits. We pass down habits. And these habits as to why we like our food to taste a certain way, why we're more acclimated to sweets in a particular way, you know, where we live and where we're raised. Like, I have friends who have Caribbean blood, you know, their family genetically, they thrive in sunny areas. But if they live on a coast where it's like they don't get a good amount of sun or a good amount, like their bodies don't respond the same way. This is just their Caribbean heritage that does this. The way that they eat and cook and certain things that they use and spices and those things. So the way that they even approach this way of life, Al-Islam, that there are things that they recognize within Al-Islam that feeds this part of them that what do I say? It gives this confirmation of the generational rituals that they were raised with, that their grandmother and great grandmother's like, well, why am I more inclined to being drawn to X? Why do I feel inclined to Y? I enjoy the experience of the ocean. I enjoy because culturally there were traditions and rituals connected to what they did. And so when we see things and we read in the Quran with, you know, that paradise and, you know, the rivers that flow beneath it, and they see that, it's like, oh, this is familiar, right? And then the Quran gives us a body to put it in the proper perspective, to give it the right flesh on it. Everything I'm saying right now has nothing to do with the notes that I'm looking at right now, but alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen, I needed to say this and share this moment. So in that experience that I find to be so beautiful, Allah gives us this moment of uniqueness, this moment of, you know, I see you and I'm not negating your experience, right? So when we talk about this idea of generational trauma, do we not think our father Adam's experience wasn't traumatic to get down from the garden? Was that not traumatic? Like, we identify Adam as our father. We're descendants of Adam, right? Adam had a whole experience with Shaitan, and then it was just like, yo, you get down from this beautiful, lush, all-encompassing place of living because you made a mistake, you slip and fell. So that had to be traumatic, right? So we do. So yeah, do we carry that? Yeah. It's not just limited to what the experience was with slavery and so on and so forth. Okay, no, take that thing all the way back, all the way, right? And this is us undoing what has been done over time in order for us to remember that garden, that experience. So when we think about this prayer, you know, I have what I did have on here is that, you know, Allah is Al-Mujib, the responder to prayers. Made it clear, it responded to prayers, right? What's beautiful about this prayer is that it's not just limited to the physical acts of salat, right? It's like what we're doing right now, we're praying, we're reflecting, we are moving into this space of recognizing Allah to understand ourselves and our relationship to Allah. We're praying, like this is that, right? And what we manifest in every prayer, that Allah makes it clear that He responds to the prayer, and Allah chooses how to respond. So when I say that this thing about responding, like there's something that's bothering us, there's something that we're having a challenge with, and it's like, you know, I want to be a millionaire, and it's like we want it to come in the mailbox, but Allah's like, no, I'm preparing the vessel to be ready to receive this, right? You know, Shaitan will stand with this immediate, instant gratification, but Allah is saying, look, why are you waiting for this single glass of water? And I got a whole ocean well waiting for you if you just take a few more steps. Like, yeah, He tempting you with this one glass. You thirsty. You want this. You feel that your body needs this. Your mind needs this. I'm not going to make it. It's not going to happen. And Shaitan is like, look at this lush glass of water. And Allah is saying, look, yo, my God, like, here's where you get to choose. I'm not going to force you to do a thing. You have the option to choose this, right? And in you choosing, now it's like, yeah, there's consequences connected to that choosing, but even in you choosing, you still have an opportunity to come on back and get it where it's supposed to be, right? It's Surah 2, ayat 186 says, when my servants ask thee concerning me, I am indeed close to them. I listen to their prayer, the prayers of every supplicant. And when he calls on me, let them also with that, when they're listening, when I call to them, listen to my call and believe me, right? That they may walk in the right way. Like, yeah, I hear you. I see you. I know. But do you hear me? Right? Do you hear me? I'm telling you, this is what I'm not going to lie and say that I'm the responder of prayers and not respond to your prayer. You prayed for this. All right. I hear you. Now, do you hear me when I respond? It's beautiful. Like, we keep tripping out, wanting it to show up with the, what they used to do, the publishers clearinghouse with the balloons and the envelope at our front door. And the law is like, okay, that's the glass of water. That's Shaitan with a glass of water. I'm not saying that it's not okay to be with, but at the end of the day, my G, like, there's still something to be paid for the choice that you are making. It's like, do you want the glass of water or do you want the legacy? Do you want the thing that carries past this one single solitary opportunity, this one single moment? And in us knowing that and recognizing that, now we open up the vast opportunities. And it's like Allah said, look, okay, it's there. You could choose it or you could choose me, right? Who better? Allah is the best choice, right? The best choice for all of us, right? So then this other ayat, and I know that my time is ticking close, and I'm looking at the clock as we go. That it says, does man think that they will be left to say we believe and that they will not be tested? And this Arabic term tested also will be translated as tempted, oppressed, afflicted, persecuted, tried. It's like, you say you believe, like, Allah, I believe, right? I do. But in you saying that, you can say whatever you want to, right? But in the action and in the doing, it's like, okay, well, let's see. And it's not even with this evil, I couldn't find another word. It's not something that is with pain or with anguish or anything like that. It gives the answer at the same time that he says, like, you're going to be tested, and then says, strive in my cause, right? That you ought to strive the way you're supposed to strive. And that he has chosen you. I've chosen you and has imposed no difficulty in this religion. Once again, Allah don't lie. So yeah, I'm gonna test you. It's coming. It's done. But choose me. And in the choosing, I'm not gonna impose nothing difficult on you in this way of life. So it's like, yeah, you're going to be oppressed. There's going to be some oppression. There's going to be affliction. There's going to be some persecution. Yet, I'm not going to impose any difficulty on you. Like, wait, huh? What? And that's what I was looking at as we were listening. I was trying to look up difficulty and the other translations for the term to difficulty. When we look at difficulty, what it's like. So it says this way of life is not difficult, right? Though you're going to be tested. Yeah, you're going to be tested. And who better to protect you in this but Allah? Allah is so he says, establish regular prayer, give regular charity, hold on to Allah, not the low frequency, tempted, instant, get it right now. No, hold fast to Allah. He's your protector and the best to protect and the best to help, right? So to ask for something else to solve your problem is not going to work. It's not sustainable. You might get that temporary fix, but you're going to be out there looking for the next, right? So it's like you want to look for what will be able to sustain you by choosing Allah first, right? So I could go on because I'm still looking at my notes. I'm gonna stop there and invite the Imam back into the room. I'm Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Yeah, you muted again. Okay. Not on you're not straight online. You are good on the phone.
How about now? Too many buttons. All right, but alhamdulillah. And now I'm hearing myself from your speaker. The no harajam, harajan. Look, that's the word. I believe he had imposed no difficulty upon you in religion. I believe the word you're looking for is in that particular is harajam. So inshallah, we can, that'll be a part of our conversation going forward, right? So yeah, that's wonderful, and as you know, we've already talked. So I'm gonna step forward, keep it going, then maybe I can cut out a little bit earlier, and we can have a little more exchange, inshallah. All right, alhamdulillah, and welcome to all. Alhamdulillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, it is a blessing. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So one of the other reasons I mentioned, I you know, obviously Haja Camila and I, you know, we have what should be obvious, a very strong connection, DNA and beyond. And so I knew that, you know, she would resonate with the subject matter of that. But the subject matter is also consistent with the overall subject. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and share my screen with you, so we can stick with that. And it's also it's very consistent with and absolutely so actually with the subject, which is intergenerational wealth. Intergenerational wealth. You might reflect that some months ago, we actually started down this path with the topic, path dependency, wealth creation in Al-Islam. And that is, in essence, what we're continuing to do. But what I do also is I walk the path, and then when I see relevancy, which is really the nature of human perception, when I see relevancy, I pick it up and, okay, we can add this to effectively the mosaic of the topic. So the way that these pieces fit are critical. So I'm going to go back to what we ended on last week, which was the a quotation from Imam Muhammad's Common Language Syntax and the African Plight, seeing the connection. We took a quote from that lecture that he delivered here in Oakland, California in 1997. And the bulk of our time last week was on that. So now we're going to move on a step further, because there is definitely something that we're leading up to. So I'll read the Imam's quote again. Excuse me. He said, as long as we sense the loss as a burden, it will be a problem for us. But if we can ever confront the loss with our rational mind and try to dispel the darkness in that situation so that we can, I had an apple before I came home, so that we can understand it, it will not be necessary for people to go back to what they were in order to have a sense of their identity or a sense of freedom or a sense of originality. That's also a part of the loss, right? So let me go ahead and highlight that since I got it right in front of me, and I want you to see that, because in order to identify, okay, what is it that's actually been lost? Well, in this brief synopsis of what the Imam was saying, in essence, the loss of identity, the loss of a sense of freedom, and the loss of a sense of originality. All right. And so just think about it. There's many of those people who are questing in their various ways. I won't name any of them, but you know, when you see your people, my people, and you know who your people and my people are, you see reaching out for identity, having and feeling a sense of freedom, right? Having a sense of originality. I got to do it my way. That's a hunger that is a product of, quote unquote, and indicative of what was lost. That's where the appetite comes from. The appetite comes from a sense of loss. That the appetite, as it is expressed without the kinds of foundations that we're talking about, that's where it comes from. The quote unquote the loss. So if you wanted to simply and abstractly say, okay, well, what was the loss? The loss was the loss of identity, loss of sense of freedom, loss of sense of originality. And the Imam's larger address went on to elaborate on these things. Continuing his quote, he said, "It is only necessary," meaning you won't have to go through all of what you're going through if you do the things that I've just suggested and that I'm about to suggest. He said, "It is only necessary if they confront it," and we've just talked about the loss. And one of the ways of identifying the loss is the way that the Imam has described it. We were subject to an experimental clinic designed to cause us to dysfunction in the vital areas of our lives. The piece that we played at the beginning of the broadcast was about intergenerational trauma, but it was a specialist, a psychologist who is, and now I'm hearing their language or her language for sure, the idea of First Nations. So they're saying that we talk about Native Americans and things like that, but the language is more interior to them, it seems. First Nation. We're the First Nation. We were a nation before y'all showed up. And then another little snippet that I came up with, little tidbits of history to go back and look into to get a little more information on it. So many, we're immersed in, surrounded by just information resources, right? So she mentioned Turtle Island. So, okay, I just remember Turtle Island. And so now I want to go and look at Turtle Island, Native Americans, and that whole colonialization process, and et cetera, for the Canadian Indians, for the Canadian, Indians, First Nations. I'll get it figured out what's the right way to say it. But one of the additional reasons that I played that piece is because, look at what happened to them. And, look, we're not comparing wounds for the sake of saying, well, our wound is more significant than their wound. I won't elaborate on that because I don't want to go down that road. The point is that you can, however, multiply the scenarios by 10 at least, and you have the so-called Negro, right? So I'm gonna step away because I hear too many things going up. I don't want to go there. Okay, so it is only necessary that they confront it. The Imam is saying, rather than doing what you're doing, here's the thing. Here's something that you can do. He said, if you can confront it with their rational mind and accept it, explore it, examine it, so that you will know it and understand it. Okay, let me go ahead and highlight those things as well. The Imam said, number one, confront it, meaning face it, deal with it. One of the ways of speaking about mental health, people have different phobias: arachnophobia, triskaidekaphobia, agoraphobia. Mashallah, I'm not minimizing anybody's particular issue, concern, or what have you. It's real. It's very real. It's part of your personal reality if that's your case. But those people who seek to, quote unquote, bring about a, quote, cure for such conditions, one of the critical aspects of it is voluntary exposure. The person has to voluntarily expose themselves a little more and a little more and a little more to the thing that they fear, and have those little small experiences that, see, you didn't die. See, you get hurt. See, yeah. So, but it had to be voluntary. It can't be forced. It had to be voluntary. So the Imam is saying, when he speaks about confront it, then that is, look, you got to face it. James Baldwin has a beautiful, beautiful quote. I wish I was more of a memorizer in that sense, but I can give you the gist of it. It says that not every problem can be faced, but you'll never solve any problem that you're unwilling to face, something to that extent. So I say you're not going to be able to solve any problem until you're willing to face it. If you're not willing to face it, there's no way for you to solve it. So the Imam is saying, this language here, confront it. You have to confront the loss. Okay? So then he says, confront it, and then he says, confront it with your rational mind, right? He's not saying, he said, no, don't come to it all emotional, all visceral, and all. He's like, no, rational. And see, so the person who was the presenter in the piece that came before, that's a clear example of someone confronting it with their rational mind. They're not confronting it with a rhetorical orientation. They're confronting it with an academic and a clinical and a scientific approach. That's what we have to have. And so that's one part of it. Confront it with your rational mind, and then accept it, explore it, examine it, so that you will know it. So these are all the things that have to be done. You have to confront it with your rational mind, accept it, explore it, examine it, and then know it, right? So when we get to that state, the Imam goes on, he said, and understand it. All of this regarding what? The loss. When you do that in relationship to the loss, then you can either try to reconstitute that life, meaning that whatever you think that life was, confront it with your rational mind, accept it, explore it, examine it, know it, understand it. Now you can say, okay, now what is required to put this back together according to the way that I am seeing it, right? And then you look at what all your resources, time and money and emotional and otherwise, to get back to a picture that you have in mind. And one of the critical aspects of it is you have to ask yourself, is that picture fantasy or reality? Even if it's an appropriate representation of historically what existed before you suffered that loss, going back to that, is that the best decision in the 21st century? Is that the best? Is there another way to get a sense of identity, a sense of freedom, a sense of an originality without going back to exactly replicate what existed X number of centuries ago that you have found scientifically to be the case, that that's who we were, that's where we were, that's what we were before they came and took us and put us in the experimental clinic and stripped us of this and stripped us of that and stripped us of that. Now let's go back. Come on now. It don't take but a couple of seconds to really think about. I think if you're rational, don't take but a couple of seconds to think about that. But the Imam said, he goes on to say, he said, you can try to reconstitute that life. Let's go ahead and understand that, because critical things to understand. Okay, now you need to be clear on which life are you talking about reconstituting. And yes, my beloved Muslim brothers and sisters, devout as they are, it's like, where are you trying to get to? Where are you trying to get to? I'm talking about in the strain that I'm speaking right now. We can love and we must love and identify and connect with all of that beautiful, wonderful, glorious, genetic, historic connection. But it's one thing to visit. It's another thing to try to live there in this time. If you understand what I'm saying about living there. I mean, you can go back to live wherever you want to live in the world. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So that's not the living that I'm talking about. But moving past all of that, so the Imam says, he said you can either try to reconstitute that life, or you can say it's not worth it. Now, that may be the bitter pill for some people to swallow, especially if you've dedicated your whole life and sense of self and sense of worth and value and reason for existing to be getting back to that life. Alhamdulillah. So I can understand how it's difficult. And therefore, some people will make a choice with, no, man, I ain't going what you talking about. I'm going back to, okay, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. So he said, you can say it's not worth it. So then the Imam says, begin where you are, or the reality that you are in, as the realm of your reality. All right. Also, all of us have been in hotels, right? And in the hotel, there's a site map. Every time you go to the elevator, there's a site map. And you look on that map, and what is it that stands out for you on that site map? It says, you are here. Let me turn those words around a little bit. So it's like, are you here? See, because if you don't know where you are, then it's likely that you don't know where you came from. It's likely you don't know where you're going, right? So the idea is that you need something to tell you where you are. So if someone is always telling you about where you were, and that being their idea of where you were, this is where you were. This is where Fahim Shuaib, George Eugene Woods, whoever, all the genes in history before me, it's like, when you tell me in a classroom 21st century or in a speech 21st century, you tell me this is where you came from, are you sure? No, it's not the truth. You don't have that knowledge. Listen, pick up a book on World War II or World War I, doesn't matter. Pick up a book. Read that book by Arthur, whoever, Dr. Johnny Joe Milosevic or whoever. Okay. And they wrote the book. They wrote the book on history. Yeah, Arnold Toynbee, he wrote the history of the world or something like that. Really? So, okay. You, one person, born well after the history that you're writing about, you have written the book that becomes the definitive truth about the world history all before your time. Come on. You cannot accept it, but it's not rational to say that these are the details of what happened. And nobody who's included in those, I'm not saying reject history. I accept what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad even gave us, where he said history is best qualified to reward all research. That's good. You have to keep reading it, but don't just read one history. Read multiple history, but always recognize that everybody is limited, because it is only Allah that sees all. No person, beautiful brother who wrote the triple blessing of Africa or what have you. Sorry, I can't think of his name right now. African brother had the series The Africans. The point is, he's still one person. He didn't see it all. There's nobody that could see it all, no matter how erudite, how scientific, how scholarly they are. The point is, you only saw what you're able to see with your actual life. And if you're talking about something that happened in an era that you didn't live and exist in, then you're accepting what has reached you from that. I'm not gonna continue with that. The point is that if you take books to tell you where you are, You have to recognize the limitation of the very books that you are depending on to tell you where you are, where you're from, and etc. Take the value of it. Take the ma'aruf of it. Take the excellence of it. As Quran said, take the best thereof. Take what's best. Take the concept, the idea, the value, the perception that it can help you gain about, quote unquote, human nature, human life, human history, etc. Get that benefit, but deal with reality. Deal with where you actually are, okay? And start from there. Start from there. Because if you go to that elevator and there's a fire in the elevator, there's a fire in the hotel, it's like, you need that map to be right. You need that map to be right. You need to read the map right, and you need it to be right. Because if you get those directions wrong, somehow it's falling off the wall, whatever, it turned upside down, you're in a panic, anxiety, and you're unable to see where you are, and therefore you don't know which way to go. All right. So let's be clear. When the Imam is saying begin where you are, what is a better place to begin than where you are? Begin where you are, or the reality that you are in, as the realm of your reality. Now let's go back up that this quotation, and that means in order to even answer that, in order to respond to that call, that is to begin where you are in the reality, it requires everything that we just said. It requires everything that the Imam said. What do you have to do? You have to confront it. What is the it in this case? The question of, well, where are we? Where are we? I mean, where are we in the context of who we are, what we are, circumstances we are? We got all statistics here, statistics there, blah, blah, blah. This number, with the lowest on that, the highest on that, the weakest on that, strongest on that. Okay. Facts, data. But the truth is not, the facts are not the truth. Facts are facts. The truth is in the interpretation of the facts. And then Allah is the one who knows the truth. You and I can look at the same facts and have two different interpretations. All right. Okay, well, what is the truth? When you say, what is the facts? The facts right there. Okay, well, I looked at the same facts, and this is the conclusion that I came to. Okay, so where's the truth? See, so we need al-Furqan, right? We need a criterion by which we can make a distinction between what's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's false, and therein lies the attitude and the idea of, okay, I'm a Muslim. So it's like, as a Muslim, I use as a criterion my epistemology, that is what determines for me what is knowledge, is what Allah says in the Quran, what the Prophet has modeled in his life, and what has been preserved for us, trusted to the extent that we must. The only is the Quran that's perfect, right? But the other materials that come from other Muslim scholars, history, etc., sources of al-Islam, they become, quote unquote, data points, factoids, to include in our deliberations, in our thinking and research, and the like. Alhamdulillah. And then Allah has to guide us to it. But the point is that we have to do the same thing about defining where we are and what is our reality. We have to confront that. Okay, where are we? You have to confront that with our rational mind. Oh man, old Trump, man, these Republicans, man. Okay, let's deal with the totality of who we are, where we are. We are here now. You're living, breathing, thinking, existing. We're here now. We who are here now, we need to communicate with each other soberly, rationally, I'm not trying to hype you up, and you're not trying to hype me up. And right now, my energy is about rationally defining where we are, because I agree with the Imam is saying you have to start where you are. And I agree then, in order to identify where you are, you have to do that vis-a-vis rational mind. All right? Come to an agreement about where we are, accept it, explore it, examine it, know it, understand it, and then go to work. That's what the Imam is saying, and that's the work that we must do. Now this as a preface to what my motivation is in dealing with the role of culture in intergenerational wealth creation. Because we used the example, and we started out using the piece from, again, First Nation clinical psychologists, quote unquote, Native Americans, for those of you who may not have heard me earlier. And she has this clinical explanation of, okay, this is what has happened, this is where we are, this is what we suffer. So it's a relative example of what needs to be done for Bilalians in that sense. And you may say many people have done it, mashallah, perhaps. But again, recognize that with us, no part is the whole. There's a requirement to have this integrated grasp that can be operationalized in a way to properly impact in all those areas that need to be impacted in order to build up that fuller maturity and culture, in order to build up that culture, because the success is going to come when we have a healthy culture. In Al-Islam, the reading of Ummah is culture, right? So, but doesn't mean that every culture is an Ummah. When I say Ummah from a Quranic perspective, that means it's a healthy womb for human growth and development. We talked about istamar, which is a term that appears in the Quran, where Allah says He has established you in the earth with everything necessary for the fulfillment of your life. And the istamar has to do with making an environment humanly habitable. All right. So Ummah does that, and it does that on the basis of the reality of the universal human nature, right? So what the Imam has said and how that relates to the particular area of wealth creation, it has to do with, and what the speaker before was saying is that there's been intergenerational trauma, and intergenerational trauma carries on through several arenas, and particularly institutionally. So in terms of the genetic transmission, the social transmission, the environmental transmission, the institutional transmission of that trauma, I need to mention another book to you. It's either my grandmother's hands or my grandma's hands. Either way, I might be thinking about Bill Withers if I say grandma's hands. But either way, his name is Resmi. So if you find any label or title with that label on it, there's My Grandmother's Hands and Resmi in the name of the author, then you're probably looking at the book that I'm talking about. He does an excellent job of doing that. And of course, Dr. Joy Degree, it's spelled like you would read it, DeGruy, and so I could be messing it up right now. Degruy, I believe that's how it's spelled. I think she does an excellent job of, I think it's called post-traumatic slave syndrome or something like that. And there's other materials. I'm not saying, and neither one necessarily is the whole package, but what I'm saying with regard to the intergenerational trauma aspect, that's what I'm speaking to those two regarding. The intergenerational, because that continues to obstruct our ability to cooperate and get problems solved and realize what we hope to, just speaking about intergenerational wealth, right? I'm dealing with, in the Jumu'ah series, I'm dealing with the 5 categories called daruri, that relate to what must be in place, established as pillars of Ummah, and that's family, intellect, religion, self, and property, the material wealth. Each one of those have to be firmed up, solid, and to be load bearing for the structure of ummah, right? But in each one of those areas, we suffer intergenerational traumas that impact the way that we do or don't interact with regard to family, with regard to intellect, with regard to religion, with regard to ourself, meaning our mental health, effectively, spiritual health, psychological health more so, and with regard to material life or property. So that intergenerational, the trauma that continues to flow through our genes and society and quote unquote culture, the atmosphere that we breathe, it continues to stymie us in the presence of all the power and potential that we have. It continues to stymie us because the blockage, like it's almost like blood clots in the body, with regard to in the family body, right, in the intellectual body, in the religious body, in the psychological body, in the material body of Bilalians. It's like there's a trauma that stagnates us in all those areas. And if you don't fix it when or as or before you're a Muslim, then you just bring this, you bring the same trauma right into the masjid. And I don't have to say a whole lot about that. After 40 years of leading experience in it, I'm a little bit familiar with that. But let's move on. So, because there's actually, let me show you. This, what I'm saying right now is leading up to that. I don't know how much we'll get to say with regard today, but these are prefaces that I need for you to get in that. So I'm just showing or flashing on screen. Sorry, Blog Talk. Flashing on screen just so you can see that we're going to get to that, inshallah. But I want you to be fully on board with me when we go into that, because this paragraph, in following Imam Muhammad's methodology, that you have to understand this paragraph so you don't stumble over big words, big phrases, big concepts. You know, I say, don't stop. You have to think. If you got a big problem, it calls for a big solution. And big problems aren't solved by small ideas. An idea can be simple, etc., but it's not a small idea if it solves a big problem. If it solves a big problem, it's a big idea. In fact, it's an idea that's bigger than the problem. All right, let's move on. So the man makes this statement also, 1988. This is like 9 years before the first statement in Oakland. He said, we cannot have all these fine institutions working on building a master race, or working on building a master society, and leaving the knowledge that Allah intended for all of us in the hands of academia, or leaving the knowledge in the hands of a few intellectuals. So you hear right there, the Imam is saying, it's like, don't depend on Muslim intellectuals as the source of the solution to the problem of your reality. Yes, there's a deliberate pause, because that's what the Imam is saying. Look, there's knowledge that's beautiful and beneficial, but you got to remember, you're working on your problem, and that needs to be identified for you. And it's applied, even by saying it, you have to deal with even whatever your ethnic extraction may be on this line. You could be a Hispanic Muslim. You could be a Pakistani Muslim. You could be a Saudi Muslim. You could be a Moroccan Muslim. You could be a Nigerian Muslim. You could be whatever. It's fine. You still need to have, you are somewhere. And you need al-Islam as a solution to your need for movement, where you are and when you are and how you are, so that you can make progress that is not predicated or dependent upon or qualified by some other ethnic Muslim group. Allah has no worries, period. But he has no worries about, well, all y'all need to be like the Pakistani Muslims. All y'all need to be like the Afghani Muslims. All y'all need to be like the Nigerian Muslims. All y'all need to be like whatever. No. Allah, to each is a goal to which he turns, so strive in the race towards all that is good. Wheresoever you are, turn your face toward the sacred masjid, and Allah is going to bring you together. So you got to be you really as Allah created and intended for you to be authentically. Otherwise, you can't make the contribution that Allah created you to make to the table of Islamic humanity globally. Who needs another imitation of such and such? We already got a real one. What the hell we need with an imitation one? Okay, let's finish this. All right, so it says we stop waiting for I got to start all over. We cannot have all these fine institutions working on building a master race or working on building a master society and leaving the knowledge that Allah intended for all of us in the hands of academia, or leaving the knowledge in the hands of a few intellectuals. And so that also applies, as the Imam speaking, no doubt, universally. Because the knowledge that the quantum physicists, the Elon Musks of the world, etc., that knowledge is not their knowledge. That knowledge is the knowledge that Allah intends for all human beings, right? But we can't sit around waiting for them to feed us academically, feed us intellectually, feed us scientifically. You have to feed yourself. And Allah has not deprived you of the wherewithal, the mechanics, if you will, the physiology, the neuronomy, in order to do just that. It's only if you buy into a narrative or an image or an identity of yourself and of them that puts them in the superior, puts you in the inferior, and they're always the teacher and you're always the student from them, and they're always the giver and you're always the lower hand. No, that's not our way. You got to be conscious of that. You have to be cautious, because the experimental clinic was designed to put us in that state of mind. Miseducation of the Negro, Carter G. Woodson. And if you don't fix it before you come into the masjid, then you come into the masjid with that same trauma operating, even though you got 5 new names. Moving on. So, dear beloved believers, we have to appreciate knowledge, appreciate education, and try our best to translate the complicated ideas and theories into language of the common person so they can get the benefit. This is the Imam. He's saying, don't think that the intellectuals are only the ones who are in the ivory towers. Don't think that the intellectuals are the only ones that have come from here. Yes, there's benefit from there. So many of our great leaders in our community, associated literally, actually formally with Imam Wardi Muhammad, have come from some of these very institutions. So we honor that. But they recognize also, those that I have in mind, they recognize also that all of that came in consequence and was either furthered or advanced or improved or weaponized, I'll even say that, by the insights of Imam Wardi Muhammad. It is what it is. So, but the point is that all of us, we don't have to have gone to and through those institutions. So the most successful people are people who dropped out of those institutions. Also, you gotta recognize that too. So it's a two-fisted approach. And so mashallah, so the Imam is telling us to do this. Okay, so let me move on so we can get, we're gonna go maybe about 10-15 minutes over, because we'll have some feedback, and it'll probably take me a good little minute to just read through this quote. I'll have to get myself put the title back on this from the sourcing. It's from some British United Kingdom institution, a research paper that had to do with the impact of culture on regional economic development. I'll get the details next time because we won't finish it today. But all those prefaces, for one, the first quote from Imam Muhammad with regard to the laws has to do with the trauma. It has to do with the trauma. So okay, the loss is a trauma. The loss is a trauma, and the trauma stays with you. In fact, I saw some TED talk. I haven't looked at it. I just saw the title. It says traumas don't transform, they transmit, or something like that. Traumas don't transform, they transmit. In fact, I think he said traumas don't transform, they transfer. So meaning it goes from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. If you don't fix it, if you don't address it, if you don't respond to it, then it just goes on, one generation after the other. Now, since we're talking about a slice of life, a slice of culture as relates to economic development in this particular quote, we need to understand, as I've said, family. We have trauma relates to family. We have trauma as relates to how we address intellect. We have trauma as relates to how we address religion. We have trauma as relates to how we deal with our own psychological health. We have trauma as relates to how we deal with our material life. All right. So this is just, since this is wealth creation and preservation, we're just talking about this dimension of it. And this is just an abstract from the research paper. For me, the entire research paper is not necessary. I say that because we know what an abstract is. The abstract is truth without details. So you do the research paper, then you can get the details. If you're working in that field, in that area, yeah, you should get the detail. But if you're just trying to get people to understand the truth in a way that impacts their perception and inshallah their behavior to the good, then that's all you need. So let's read on. So quoting this, and again, I ask your forgiveness for not actually having the title from the source of this for you, but inshallah next week I'll have it for you, inshallah. So it said, culture matters for regional economic development and is one source of cognitive lock-in that influences path creation and dependency. However, little is known about the sources of regional variation in culture. This study explores the long-term imprinted effect of the Industrial Revolution on cultural practices across local communities in Great Britain. And here's a little hint that you can find this article yourself. If you do a Google search and when you put quotes around, so you can take any set of words, any set of words in this paragraph that you see, put them in a Google search, put them in quotes, and it will find where that exact statement is made online. And likely, if you find it, you will actually find the paper that I'm reading this from. All right. So it says this study explores the long-term imprinting effect of the Industrial Revolution on cultural practices across local communities in Great Britain. Historical data from 1891 on the employment in large-scale industries like textiles and steel is used to estimate causal effects of industrialization on 5 cultural dimensions. It is found that historical industrialization is still reflected in contemporary local cultures marked by lower engagement with education and employment, less adherence to social rules, but stronger collective action and social cohesion. It is concluded that one reason for the relatively poor effect of public policies on local and regional economic development is that historical industrialization has left a lasting legacy on contemporary culture in many places that impairs institutional efforts to foster change. All right. So that's the end quote. And you see, I have these highlighted areas, which more my detail would come in that. But in essence, since I'm not going to elaborate on it right now, I'm going to go back and bring Haja Camila back, and we have some final comments between us and from you. But we'll take off. We'll take off on the details of that there. But in essence, you can see it says culture matters. Certain things, this issue of path dependency. Once certain things happen in a given society, culture, region, etc., it impacts the culture in which it occurred. And if it is not if it's not a healthy impact, then that unhealthy impact reverberates, continues throughout that group's life and their culture, and they breathe it in because that's the nature of culture. And so when you try to change those people, quote unquote, try to quote unquote help them who may be suffering some deleterious impact of it, if you try to change that without addressing the underlying reality of the strength of culture and how culture itself perpetuates a thing that's once established, good or bad, right? Then if you try to institute something that does not address what needs to be addressed inside that group, it's not going to be effective. And that's how many things. I mean, all of us can think about poverty programs and empowerment programs that were designed to try to help the Black folks get out of poverty and get out of blighted circumstances, and what has worked. So, mashallah. So, what we have to do is we're gonna follow up that with more detail next week, inshallah. Let me bring my co-host back and we wind it down here. All right, let me drop a couple of these quotes that are mentioned here. Abdul Shahid, what did he say? He said, "For me, Imam W. Muhammad's words show that there a direct connection between the loss and common language syntax. So I started research by understanding syntax, which by definition means sin arranged in the order of tactics through language. And the first tactic was make slaves fear the captors as God. Yes. Thus the door for more step-by-step colonization of the heart and mind and soul was implemented." You are very, very correct. Alhamdulillah. And go ahead, Haji, what you got?
No, there was another comment. I was just going to let you have at it.
Oh, do you see it? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Allahu Akbar. Inshallah, one day soon we will have more platforms in which you and other insightful believers can inform us how to perform this delicate operation. MashaAllah, make dua for us on that. And who knows, maybe you, Iman, are one of those people. If you're resonating with it, then get your research on and contribute, inshallah. All right. Am I missing any more?
No, that I believe that was it.
All right, go ahead.
All right. No, I mean you've covered it in full detail. It's the thing about like what I'm discovering, and the more we start to dive into scripture and really understanding parts of how it's a mirror for us individually, and then how that reflects out in the environment that we're in, is that to maintain this level of focus and clarity as to who you are, what Allah is asking you to do, right? Because even in that, it's easy to be distracted in a way that and overwhelmed and emotionally overwhelmed, on not on the upswing overwhelmed, but overwhelmed in a way that it's like, this is impossible, you feel like this is impossible because of how large it is. But if you stick to your vision, the inspiration,
Right.
the inspired vision that Allah has given you individually, that the
Right.
work that you're
Right.
doing to improve oneself is the work
Yeah.
that makes the
Yeah.
you not
Yeah.
get overwhelmed in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the work is holographic. Holographic. Plus, we are all one. Everything influences everything else, and so each one of us has to play our part. Develop your talent. Right. Allah says, "I am a worker." He said, "Work ye in your places." I am a worker. Right. I am working. Right. So that's what we have to do. And don't think that the whole job is yours. I make this statement, and we're going to basically close out. That a good Reverend preacher, pastor friend of mine, Jalford Smith Sr., I'll call his name. I'll speak of an honorable mention on the tongue of truth. May Allah bless him for the what some people call the shout out. But the idea is we would see each other on different occasions traveling. But then one of my favorite questions when I first encounter somebody that's really, successful at what it is that they have done or are doing, I said, so I'd ask the question of, to what do you ascribe, your achievement, your success, without which you wouldn't have been as successful as you find yourself being? And he said there was a situation when I replaced a pastor. There was a time in his history he replaced the pastor to become the new pastor. And it's like, mashallah, I guess I kind of fall into that kind of generational stuff too. It's like, because I'm 40 years in the work now, in terms of that. So from a church perspective, there are those that live and work a lot longer, but then finally at some point in time you just gotta pass it on. And trust me, I'm not trying to hold on just for my deliberations. Like I'm looking for a successor, qualified, quote unquote, to move things on. But moving past that, the idea, he said when I replaced a pastor in my early life as a pastor, he said, the one that I succeeded, meaning that I'm coming after him, he said, son, remember this. So your job is not to complete the task. Your job is to move the line. That's the advice. Your job is not to complete. You're going to kill yourself if you think that it's your job that everything got to be done before you die. No. Your job is not to complete the task. Your job is to move the line. When you stepped in, where was the line? Okay, it was right here. All right, now you turn around and you look and you're about to step out. Have you moved the line? If you move the line, mashallah, that's Allah bless you to move that line that much. And there's been a whole lot of line movers before your time, and there are going to be line movers after your time. Your job is to just move the line. That's the way you can preserve your energy, your life, your spirit, etc., and all will be well. Well, that's it for me.
I think it's been more than enough. If the listeners and the watchers and the audience are not put into a state of full on reflection, and it's like, okay, you got to check your ears. You need to see what's going on with your ears, because you have been given a full meal and objective to carry you through to next week and next year even. Okay.
Mashallah, inshallah. All right, love you. Assalamu alaikum to all.